Alright, good afternoon everybody, 3:20 or so on May the 23rd, Thursday. Continuing work over here, got the tape off of the boot. Boot looks pretty good in the wrapper liner. I'm going to block out the polyester filler that I did the other day before I had left and get that stuff all kind of try to take care of all that. And I don't know, we'll see what else we can do for the evening. Alright, I have everything blocked out, cleaned up. This spot right here, I'll put some poly filler on that. Got some pretty deep scratches here. I'm going to get some polyester filler on that and in that kind of general area there. And the only other spot I'm going to hit is this guy right here with these various little dings and dents and everything like that. So I'm going to take a hammer real quick, knock those little high spots up a little bit, and otherwise I'm happy with where everything is. Not crazy about this over here. I can't really say I'm happy about it, but it is what it is, and I'm not going to really get all bent out of shape. Hopefully the build primer, you can see how I've got like 3 different layers. It looks like a topographical map almost. That's all my filler that's under there. Obviously didn't feather it in perfectly. So hopefully the build primer takes care of a lot of that. So I'll get polyester on that, and then I'm going to grab a bite to eat and then move on to something else. Probably no painting tonight. Alright, about 10 after 7 or so, I am done with the polyester filler. Still got this high spot here, obviously surrounded by low spots. Still oil can's pretty good. Perfect is great. Done is better. Got this all filled in here. I'm happy with the way this finally came out. That took a lot of work to get into that seam there. And over here, again, this is not perfect. I can still feel a little bit of stuff going down in there, but I'm happy with the way that it sits. And that was really about it. I did a little spot under here. You can kind of see that, this guy here. And happy with the way that came out. So nothing's clean or anything. Like I said, I'm not painting today, but I think for the most part that's going to be the end of the filler on the back here. So I'll get this into epoxy primer at some point. Got to start kind of planning my path ahead here to stay in any windows that I need to stay in. Also, if you'll notice, I got the strip and I hung it from the little cup hooks that I'm hanging the tarp from. You can really see how bright this is in here. So I'm definitely going to buy another one of these things maybe tonight. At least one more string, if not even 2, and just try to go all the way around in here for paint. Like I said, I think it's about 40 bucks a roll, so they're not cheap, but they are nice. They are very bright, and I'm sure I can figure out something to do with these in the future. So I'll try to follow the same idea there and at least give me light up high, and might have some shadow issues. I'll see, but I think that's going to be the way I'm going to go with that. Since I don't have a whole lot of time for the rest of the evening, I'm going to try something new here, something I've never done before, and that's going to be to reupholster this little plate here. Now this is one of those, I've showed you this before. This is the thing that goes under the dash, kind of underneath the glove box. Got the little pads that I saved from them. You can see that I have epoxy primered all of those. I showed you those before. Here's the original vinyl that went on there. Now you can get this, you can get pretty close to this vinyl on Amazon, which I've got here. Now it's not perfect by any means. In the Triumph, you can see there's a lot more kind of longer, wider lines, and in the Amazon one that I found, there are some areas where there's a kind of a longer line, but the Triumph's a little bit more coarse, I guess you could say. Now, I only intend to use this vinyl for these bars and the dash covering. Everything else I've gotten either from Rimmer Brothers or from Spit Bits, all that will use the original, more proper pattern for the vinyl. I haven't really been able to source a good place for that outside of places out of England, and it's just not worth it to me to go through that problem to get those. So I've got some 3M Super 77 multi-purpose adhesive. Says it's for foil, foam, paper, metal, plastic, fabric, cardboard, and insulation. So I figure that's gonna do. My concerns are for getting it a tight enough spray that I don't get this stuff all over the place and make an absolute mess and get sticky and everything sticks to me and then I can't get it set. My other concern is that the angle of this pad here, the curvature, is pretty sharp, and if you can see these pads, this corner is going to have to be held down. And again, I don't know what kind of adhesive properties this is going to have. So my initial bet is going to be to spray to the bottom of this, which needs to be cleaned up. And then I'm going to tack them together and just use my painter's tape here to try to do the maybe one on the end and two on either end and one in the center, and then hold down the two corners until this thing sets up a little bit. So I got to read some instructions here, review some stuff and all that kind of stuff. And when I get a little bit closer, I'll show you. Another thing I got going down here is you can see all the rust that's on this guy, and that's just rust that has impregnated itself into the foam. So I got a brass wire brush, and I'm just going to go over that and try and get as much of this out as I can, and then maybe use some wax and grease remover maybe to see if that helps at all. But I'm not going to get too crazy about it, but it is flaky. You can kind of feel it, so I want to get the heavier stuff off. I obviously don't want to rip into the adhesive if I can help it, or excuse me, into the foam, so I don't destroy it. Alright, another thing I had done is I had taken measurements of this to see, before I took it all apart, the only difference between these two, at least that I've been able to determine, is that this little foam pad here gets offset to one side. It's either looking like this, where you've got a bigger gap here than over here, or it looks like this, where obviously the opposite is true. Now you can also see, probably can't see it on the camera, but I can see the rust indentations from the little pitting and everything like that. So the measurements that I took had it at about an inch from the edge on one side and about 3.5 inches on the edge from the other side. So I'm just going to take a tape measure real quick, mark that with a Sharpie so I know what I'm looking at. Alright, so now I know about where the edges would come in, and like I said, looking at the pitting on there, it looks to be about right. So I did spray this in wax or grease remover just to kind of get the stuff off. I think it's pretty clean. So essentially it's going to go like that or so when it comes up there. Now I am overlapping on the 3-inch side, 3.5-inch side, so I just went off of where the old glue was. So hopefully this isn't too bad, but I think it'll be okay. I'm not too concerned about these measurements. So now I'll look into the look at this directions for this adhesive real quick. I'm going to be putting glue on this surface and glue on this surface probably at the same time. I'll have the tape standing by, pre-cut or pre-ready to go here so I don't fumble with that. And then give it a second here and we'll see. I'm also going to wax and grease this surface right here in case I just didn't say that. Alright, so directions have been read. Works, seems pretty straightforward. 2 surface bonding, which is what I'm doing here. Essentially it tells you to spray both surfaces, wait for about 30 seconds or at least 30 seconds, and then you've got about a 30-second to 15-minute bonding window. So I've got some time, and you test the tackiness. It tells you to use your knuckle, and if you test your knuckle and it comes away on your knuckle, then it's not tacky enough. If it resists sticking to your knuckle, then it's good. And then it also tells you to clean the tips with acetone, which I just so happen to have, so I'll be using that when I'm done to clean the tips. One other thing I'll point out here is it does say that it's kind of a directed spray or a I don't know the term that I should use. I'm not sure if you're going to be able to see this, but I'm going to spray it and the stuff's going to come out like almost like a cat's eye, if you could see that. So pretty narrow but tall stream there. Well, I've got this kind of going the other way, so I'm going to have to spray either on the side or spray like this. Spraying like this, I'm going to get it all over the stuff back here. But anyway, I'm going to go ahead now and get my tape ready and then get some bond in here. And now, if you might have noticed there, I went back and kind of oversprayed. Again, I'm going to cover this whole thing in vinyl, so I'm not too concerned with overspray here of the adhesive because it's all going to be covered. So I'm waiting about 30 seconds here and we'll see. Alright, it's definitely starting to tack up. Give it another 30 seconds or so. Alright, I think that's good. All right, it's been several minutes. It's still pretty tacky. I'm gonna let it, just gonna let it sit for a little bit longer. What I got here is the strip that I cut. This is the pattern. All right, so again, what I've got here is the original one and my cutout one. So I overcut the original one, of course, to be a little bit bigger. So now what I want to try to do is line up as best as I can the areas where I'm going to need holes and how I'm actually going to cut it. And it's pretty close right now, but I want to try to get it, as close as possible. And then try to do a couple dry fits. I'm not exactly positive how I'm going to do that, because I don't want to mess up the gluing portion and then have the wrong thing there. But we'll see. So it doesn't really look to me that it's too big that I can't give it a try and see what goes down here, and then I'll kind of go from there. So when I wrap, I can also see here I've got the creases. I got these two holes here because this was bent over. Those two holes there, and those two holes correspond to these two holes, the smaller ones that are inside here. I don't really understand the purpose of these. These are pop riveted. I don't know why they pop riveted them, but at least that gives me an idea of what side. Notice this is not as long of a lip. That's just going around this little portion here. This one's going inside here quite a bit. So I obviously want to make it so that it kind of conforms to that. And it's also on a slight angle, so that makes it more fun. So that's probably going to be about right as far as being the proper length. Now I'm not worried about the edges and getting any vinyl in the edges, on the rights or left edges, that is, but I do want to make sure when I bend over here that I've got that nice and tight, and that's probably going to be the trick for me, is to get these nice and tight. So I'm going to have to come up with little clamps or something like that, I think, probably before I try this, that'll hold that stuff in place. The only other thing that I can think of is do it in steps. Kind of thinking as I'm talking here, if I do it in steps, I would bond it here, get that all ready to go, and snipped as I need to kind of make this curve, and then get that bonded, and then bend that over and hold it tight, and then do that last little bit. I think I might try that. Again, this is the first time going around. I don't need it to be incredibly successful. I can always come back and clean this whole thing up and try it again. I'm not worried about the epoxy getting compromised by this adhesive stuff in any way. So we'll take our tape off here carefully so I don't pull the pad off. Alright, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to bend this corner first, get this thing tacked in around here like this, and get it to dry. So I'm just going to do that portion. I'm also going to trace out, now that I know it's about where I am, I'm going to trace out with a Sharpie here so that I don't go in the wrong spot. Alright, so now the way that that's set up, that'll allow me to just bend it over, and it's hard for me to say if I'm going to have to snip it. I don't think I am. Alright, so we're just going to go for it. I got 2 yards of this vinyl. I got more than I need, way more than I need. Alright, so I'll let that tack up. Sure my vinyl's good. Let it sit. Stuff holds really well though, I'll tell you that. Well, I'm frankly very impressed with how well that just held. Alright, so little lesson learned there I think already is I did not glue this edge here. That might have been a good idea in this case, just to kind of help me hold this when I come around on it. Now this side I'm definitely going to have to cut, because as it comes around here and fits into there, can't see it very well, but it bubbles up there, so that's obviously not going to work. The other thing, next time I'll make this a little longer, because as I'm coming around the corner, if you can see, it wants to bow in here to make up that curve change, and it's starting to flex in on me. Alright, so now I'm looking at this side. I'm going to have to upholster, or I'm going to have to spray glue on this side and get around here and then do that and stop, I think, and then work my way around again. So this is going to start to get a little, probably not working too well. I'll let that tack up. Alright, so we'll fold it over here. Alright, so that seems to have worked so far. Trying to bend it over a little bit here. Working my way around with it. Alright, now I'll spray this side. Alright, we'll let that sit. I'll be amazed if this works out for me. I'm really afraid when I come around the corner here and I get those the crinks or the wrinkles that I'm going to be able to get that out. But we'll see. Also, obviously now have extra adhesive that I just sprayed right where it was. It says to use acetone to clean it. Just so I happen to have some of that. See if it takes it out. Yeah, it looks like it will. Alright, we'll still start bending it over. Alright. Must say I'm pretty damn happy with that. I'll get this cleaned up. I'll show you the final product. Alright, well, like I said, I was happy with the way that it came out, but I made the rookie mistake of not checking how something will react with something, and I wiped some acetone over this thing to get the adhesive off, and it essentially bleached out the vinyl. Obviously I should have known better than that, than to just go to town with it. But that's alright. There is a couple spots in here, like this wrinkle here, that where it's not flush because it wasn't cut here. There's other spots in here where it's not flush, so I'm not really that bent out of shape that I'll take this back off. So I'm going to try to get it off real quick before it dries up, and then move on. Good morning, everybody. Saturday, 25th of May, 9:18 exactly. Been here for a little while, just didn't really have anything to share so much. I decided to put the rear bumper brackets, some of them back in the car, just to kind of placeholder so I don't lose track of stuff. These are also the rear trailing arms. I'm going to put those in. I got a bag of the mounting bolts here that are nasty and dirty that I got to clean up. I want to continue on working the steering column, working the upholstery for these things. I've got a different way I'm going to do this a little bit. I'll show you that when I get there. And I also intend to get the back of the car back into epoxy today. That'll probably finish off the day, and that's where I'm at. What these are the trailing arm brackets. So this is where the rear suspension ties into the body of the car. This is a more critical weld that I'm a little nervous about when I had to pull both of these off. So not only did I plug weld them all the way around, but I put a couple just seam welds, I guess you could say, just to kind of hold those in. So you can see there's 3 bolts going on there. These 2 will come from the back. I'll show you that in a second. This one's a little odd. This is a captive nut that's welded to this particular piece here. Both the black car and Dorothy had that. And there's a bolt from underneath that goes in there. And really all it seems to do is tie the floorboard into this piece. I don't think the later cars had that. That's something I have to research, or if you guys know, you can drop me a comment. I don't think if you buy these pieces new, you can still get these. I don't believe they have that. So either it was just deemed unnecessary, or I don't know, it's just me, I don't remember. But I got those in there, and I'm going to show you how the trailing arm brackets from the outside of the car fit up. All right, so not the best angle and everything under here, but this is where the trailing arm brackets go in. And I'll show you these. So that's these guys right here. That's these guys right here. Now the way that they go in is you have this extra little where it curves around and is welded together to add some strength for it not to flare out. Also, you can see this little notch here. So a bolt hole will go, or a bolt will go through this guy here and attach the trailing arm into this bracket. And what this guy is supposed to do is just to prevent incidental rotation of the nut head, or the bolt head, excuse me. And it's just a punch out on the metal. I'm not a big fan of those things. That they not for taking them back apart. So obviously 1 or 2 time use it works great, but once your bolt rusts in or anything like that, you can really start to tear these things up, kind of like I did a little bit over here. This thing is probably not very functional anymore, but it does have a nylock nut on the other side, so I'm not too critically concerned. Another thing is there's spacers that go in between here to drive this out or in. Dorothy had 5 spacers on both sides. So I have them in primer right now, just regular old Rust-Oleum primer. I decided not to Raptor line, or excuse me, not to epoxy prime those things. So anyway, I'm just going to lightly get these bolted in. I'm not going to screw them all the way down to give me some room for the spacers that need to go in there, and I'll show you here in a sec. So I've got those brackets in a little bit. Give me enough room to get spacers in there, more than enough room, hopefully, to get about 5 spacers in there. And you may notice 2 little holes on either side of that bracket there. Oops. And from the other side, so the things come in with captive nuts, and then you have additional locking nuts that go onto those. So I'll leave those loose for now until I get it all situated. But that's how that piece bolts up. Back to the turn signal thing. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to try to cut this black off, clean that up in there, and then put shrink tubing on it. Now the shrink tubing is not going to be glossy like this is, and I'm not really that concerned with it, but it will look okay, I think. Try not to cut my hand open here. So the shrink tubing is just cheapo Harbor Freight stuff, 1/4 inch, and there's like 8 feet of it, so I'm sure that I'll have more than enough. And then put the nice new knob on there that I got from a gentleman off the forum that helped me with the handbrake rubber piece, if you remember that. Alright, so that cut right off. Clean that right up. So now I'll probably take the wire wheel here. It looks like this thing was not shrink tubing originally. I can see some adhesive here. Probably just fit on. Anyway, I'm going to take the wire wheel, which I unfortunately just put away, and get this all cleaned up out of the rust and the adhesive and stuff like that, and come right back. So I have the turn signal cleaned up, shaft all cleaned up. Also got the headlight switch, got the black removed from there, got that cleaned up. Now this headlight switch still had the correct knob, and looking at it, it's got to be original. It's pretty brittle, and it's obviously faded, but I was able to remove it in one piece, so I'll hold on to this if nothing else for old time's sake. But I have 2 new ones here. Notice the turn signal one is kind of flat, while that headlight one is a little almost like an egg shape, kind of a skinny egg, bulbous. So I got my shrink tubing here. I'm going to cut that to fit, slide it down each of the handles here and get it cut to fit, and then watching that I don't go beyond the knurled section, and then size it up, see how far these go down. So I'll get these lined up here, see how far they'll press in. I'm going to mark that, bottom those out and mark that, so that I don't have the shrink tubing too far, but I also do have it far enough. Alright, got those marks, so I'll pull them back off. Again, this is just so I can cut the shrink tubing properly. So I'm going to slide the shrink tubing down each one of the handles here. Just feel for the end and cut it. So obviously I'm cutting it long. No biggie. Alright, so that's it for that shrink tubing. $1.88 I think it was. Alright, so now my concerns with the shrink tubing here are that the handles themselves do a pretty good curve, and the shrink tubing doesn't really match that curve very well. It kind of wrinkles up. So I'm not sure as it heats if it'll follow that. We're going to find out. So I want to get it jammed down as far as I can and just kind of deal with that little wrinkle in there. How bad that's wrinkled there. So we'll try to see what happens here. Again, I've got 8 feet of that stuff, so I can always heat it up. And if I don't like it, slice it, try it again. Put my heavier gloves on so I don't burn myself. Alright, there's the wrinkle. Came out pretty well. You got to just kind of take your time there. You don't want to put too much heat on it because you'll melt it, but you want to put enough to get out the wrinkle. So obviously I didn't trim the tubing to fit before I melted it, so I'll just go around with a razor knife and trim it out and try to find my black line. Alright, real happy with the way that came out. I think that looks good. So now I'll trim it back, like I said, with a razor knife. I'll probably go right to the knurled section. These little knobs may fit on without having to worry about it. But you do want to at least uncover the knurled section so that you get some grip on that. I mounted the switches into the steering column just to give me a little bit of a platform. So the turn signals, obviously you want to put the knobs in the right spot. They're not on yet. So the turn signal one, get you a close up here, shaped like that. When you look down the turn signal, so this would be looking through the steering wheel. The long tapered end, I'll turn it, rotate it 90 degrees. The long end goes towards the driver, and the shorter end, this guy down here, goes towards the front of the car, and that faces you, so you kind of see it in profile a little bit. And then for the lamp switch, the fat end is towards the driver, so you get to see the biggest surface area, I guess you could say, and then the other side is obviously towards the car. So I am going to use Gorilla Glue for this stuff, clear Gorilla Glue. I have never used this stuff, but I didn't want to use J.D. Weld, and this Gorilla Glue's, I've had luck with their tape and other stuff, so I'm happy to use it. So I think I made a mistake. Looking at the Gorilla Glue stuff, it wasn't grabbing. So I sat here for a good half an hour, tried to turn the knobs, and they turned freely, like no tackiness whatsoever. So I read the fine print, and it says, not recommended for use on polyethylene or polypropylene plastics. Now I don't really know what this stuff is made out of, but it's plastic, so my guess is that's probably one of those. They should put like parentheses, in other words, every plastic you'll ever encounter. But anyway, what I'm going to use instead is that 3M stuff that I've been using for, or did use for the crash pads underneath the dash, which I have to redo here. And so I'm going to spray that down and then use this, and I expect this to go much better. Alright, we'll let this sit for a while. I'll give it another 30 minutes or so, and if this doesn't seem to have worked, I'll put some good twist on it. I don't want to snap it, but and if this doesn't work, I'll go do JB Weld, I guess. About 12:30 or so, my window is rapidly closing for getting paint. I'd like to get painting by about 2 o'clock. So I got a couple things here. But anyway, I want to get this done. So what I'm using is these binder clips to help me hold the stuff down just so I could get it measured up. I put a couple cuts in the top here to allow it to fold over itself. And this is a new piece, obviously, since I screwed up the last piece. So if you can tell in there, I way overcut it lengthwise so that I wouldn't run into the issues that I ran into last time. However, my approach is going to be the same, where I'm just going to spray it down, attach it, and work my way around. And those binder clips just put big old gouges in there. Look at that. Well, I'm going to cut a new piece there. That's unfortunate. So, don't use binder clips, I guess. Alright, got the epoxy primer inducing. You may notice that they're not reupholstered anymore. That's a long story. I got the gun all ready, set up. Got the car cleaned up. Hey, there is finally the driver's seat. Got that cleaned up, ready for paint. Got the seat frame, the seat bottom cushion frame, and the two brackets for the front bumper. Get those in epoxy primer and probably wrap the liner of those as well. I do have one more quick shot of wax and grease remover and tack out the back of the car, but otherwise that's going to be ready to shoot. So I'll get in here, get that done. Alright, one coat on everything. Come back through here in about another 15 or 20 minutes to get the second coat on. It's been a little bit. I missed some spots as usual on most of the stuff, especially on the bottom of the seat there. I don't know if you can see the color difference there, but on that portion right there. But otherwise, happy with the way that it's coming out. I unfortunately forgot to tape off the holes here for the boot and got to spraying before I even really realized it. So hopefully the inside of the boot is now not a red-gray color. I'll be a little upset if that's the case, but incidental overspray, I think I'll be okay with that. So hopefully, cross my fingers, I didn't just wreck a lot of work there. Alright everybody, that's all I got for the weekend. Thanks so much for watching. Leave a comment below, tell me what you think. Good epoxy day, so-so upholstery day, and now I got the driver's side seat ready and in epoxy. Now I can be getting on the upholstery of that. That's a kit. I don't have to make my own for that, so we'll see how that goes. That ought to be fun. Remember, this weekend on Monday specifically, it is Memorial Day. I'm sure most of you that watch this channel know that Memorial Day, as opposed to Veterans Day, is to honor those that have given their life for our country, in the service of our country. So please take a moment when you're celebrating, hopefully with family and friends, and having them over to honor those that have fought and died for this country. So otherwise, have a good rest of your weekend. Cheers.